Incoming transmission.
The Klingon word of the day is Tug.
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
So, this is a huge victory for the good guys.
Scotty, beam me up.
Resistance is futile.
Live long and prosper.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings and welcome to the Computer Resumed podcast, the show covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order for fans new and old. I'm your host, writer-comedian, Mr. Todd A. Davis. Author of several sci-fi novels, many of which have become Amazon top 100 bestsellers, with some finding their way into the top 10. He speaks multiple languages, plays several instruments, and expresses his creativity through drawing, painting, sculpture, and music, but still considers his marriage to Tahira Yasmin his greatest accomplishment. It's Daniel McMillan! How you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you?
Oh man, I am very well. Thank you so much for carving out the time. You were very kind enough to send me one of your books, and I started diving into it. We're not going to beat around the bush. We're just going to jump right in here. Man, is it fascinating. The one, because I keep my wife keeps asking me, what's the title again? And I keep mispronouncing it. So here, for the record, the one that you sent me is just
try again, Todd. You'll get it.
Tritonus, the
Tritonus Venture.
The Tritonus Venture. I have had some trouble wrapping
because
my
it
tongue
happens
around.
on this artificial island. I was thinking of like Triton.
Yeah,
like it's not the musical reference of a tritone, which
okay.
I had a couple of people write to me and go like, "Why does this have this musical?" It was like, no, Triton. Yeah, god of the ocean, and yeah,
it reminds me of movies like The Island and Ridley Scott's Alien and a little bit of Blade Runner. I haven't finished it just yet, but I'm just on the outside edges of it. But man, it's so good.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
so
what I
much.
write for.
Let me ask you: at what point in your nerddom, in your fanboy life, did writing your own narratives come into view for you? Like, was it pre Star Trek, or like at what age, or was it high school, college?
Well, you know what? I've always written since I was a kid, and as a matter of fact, I remember being like about 12 years old, I guess, on a camping trip with my parents at this beautiful lake, and spending the brunt of the summer in the trailer rewriting what was basically Star Wars, right?
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. And stuff like that. And, there's creative writing in school and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of like writing as a thing, I didn't actually publish my first book until I was 49 years old, and I'm 53 now. So it's only been like 5 years. But since then, I've been pumping them out. Like I just because I can't stop writing, so I tend to write about 4 novels a year.
Wow,
and
that is awesome,
because I can't stop. But you know what though, getting started in it, I'm a big believer in try everything. Like if you feel an inclination to try something, or you get this idea and you act on that, and try it out. And so I've done a lot of different things. Like I played music professionally for a while. I did paintings, and I did commission work as a painter. And I can play music, but I know people who are like musicians, and I'm not that. And I know people who are artists, and I'm not that either. And so I had gone through a whole bunch of things, just trying stuff out. And I did sculpture, and I did, and I can sculpt too. And I do a lot of other things too. But when I found writing, it was like the idea starts in my head. It's my idea. I came up with it. And it goes from the seed of an idea to expanding it into a story where it's actually something that's happening to characters and people. And then from there, it goes into like, okay, now I've got it a little more outlined and it's ready. And then I end up, and the whole thing came from and originated from my own, there's no external forces at play. And that's kind of the draw. Like, I just love the creativity of it, that I own it from top to bottom, left to right. It's all mine.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's, in looking at, talking about when you get those urges to create something, I think, and I've spoken about it a couple times here on the show, after that first wave of the pandemic, things started to open back up, because when the pandemic hit, like all the stand-up comedy open mics shut down, like,
oh yeah, right, of
full
course,
stop immediately. And then after that first wave, a couple things started to open back up, and there was this flood of people who had been sitting at home watching Netflix stand-up specials. So every mic was flooded with new people, and it was kind of the veterans sitting in the back watching, okay, here's another new baby bird about to jump out of the nest. Let's see how they do. And it's fun because you kind of get to see the germ of an idea and let that build into a premise. And then that premise starts to expand and take shape. Then you're also bouncing off the audience. And I always tell people, like, in terms of writing stand-up, I can sit at home and write stand-up all day long, and that's great. But the editing process is such a big part of it, and I'm sure it is for you as well. You really don't start to see fully formed bits or fully formed specials, for lack of a better term. You really don't start to see the fully formed piece as a whole until you start hitting those open mics and you start testing them out, and like, oh, this thing doesn't work the way I worded it. Got to take it back to formula and work it again. And all the pieces are there. Now we just have to rearrange it. We actually spoke a lot before we got rolling about the structure and order of a narrative can affect it in such dramatic ways. I mentioned Chris Nolan's Memento. Since talking with you, like Quentin Tarantino, huge on telling the narrative out of order to get a bigger, better response. And where did you find your structure in terms of how you tell a story as opposed to just a straight linear narrative? Like, was there any one particular inspiration to kind of tell the story differently, for lack of a better term?
In the book that you're reading, yeah, absolutely. In the Tritonus Venture, I had the entire story laid out, and it was all, it started at the beginning, went through all, the rising tension, everything, leading toward a satisfying ending. But when I was looking at the story, I put each little scene on a card, and I lay all the cards out on the table so I can see my entire story in one place and just kind of scan through it and have the story play out in my head. And when I was doing that with it laid out that way, everything was there, and it was a good story, but it wasn't, there was something missing. It wasn't, didn't have that pop that I wanted, and I knew that it was in there somewhere. And so I actually found inspiration in The Haunting of Hill House, because they went through some of the scenes where they would show certain things happening to certain characters, and they would see, like the mother doing something crazy in her bedroom, and they just kind of go, like, Mom, and they'd snap her out of some reverie that she was in, and it was weird. But then when they went back through that and showed it through Mom's eyes, and that's when you find out that she was standing there looking at these ghosts and having a conversation with them, and her kids coloring her snapped her out of this thing. And so I thought, what, that's something that I can try. Not everything you try works out, right? So I went, okay, I'm going to take this because it's a kind of an ensemble cast in the book. And so it was like, okay, let's start with this character, run them through up to a certain point where they're where they're kind of developed and that's done, up to that point.
Yeah.
And then let's go back to day one of the story and look at it again through the eyes of another character. But you would see the first character kind of through another character's eyes now. And I did that. The book is in 5 parts, and the first 3 parts are 3 sets of characters going through their emotions. And then when you arrive at part 4 of the book, all the players are in one place at the same time. They're ready to rock and roll. Everybody's primed. Everybody's had this unbelievable crap happen to them. And it's time for all hell to break loose.
Wow.
And so parts 4 and 5 are how that plays out.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to diving into Tritonus Venture so much more. It's definitely going to be living on my tablet and my phone for the duration. Absolutely. But let me, because we've talked about on this show, we've talked about how an enterprise specifically, I think really could have benefited from, I'll say, more diversity in the writer's room. And of course, diversity in the writer's room can take many different forms, but I specifically think, it really probably wouldn't have hurt them. They're shooting in Hollywood. Go over to the Comedy Store, poke your head in the door and go, hey, we need some writers for Star Trek. Like, you will have more than you can shake a stick at.
Room full of hands goes up. Oh, me.
Yeah, of course. Trust me, all the comedians, they're all nerds. We can smell our own. But, they also have some great tech writers. Oh yeah, I'm working on Star Trek. Well, I retired from NASA. What? Okay. So they've got that going for them as well. And when you're looking at the different types of storytelling in Enterprise specifically, there's been multiple instances of this particular episode is so damn close to a horror movie. I know, right. I think Fight or Flight, very early in season 1, Hoshi walks into a room where a bunch of bodies are hanging from the ceiling.
Yes.
Yeah. And then after the minefield, they go to Dead Stop. They go to that little, basically a repair station, a fully automated repair station. And it's not, and they're like, man, this is awesome. It's just creating food and automatically fixing the ship and all this, that, and the other thing. And then Travis Mayweather disappears. And what happened? And then they find the room of bodies again, of like, yeah, we're using the brain power of all these different species and all these different individuals to power this station. It's like, oh my God, that's terrifying. But yeah, first of all, what was your introduction to Star Trek? Do you recall? Was it a particular show or particular episode?
Yeah, you know what? I can remember exactly because I grew up on a little farm in Northern Ontario up here in Canada, and we only got 3 channels, and one of which was the French channel. And so we were really limited in what we had to watch. And so we didn't have Star Trek, the original series, and like it wasn't available on the channels that we had. So it wasn't until I moved out and was going to college, and I was boarding with this family, and Next Gen was just starting. And so he was like, we got to watch this. And of course I knew what Star Trek was, and I had read some comics and stuff too, so wasn't completely, I knew what it was and who the characters were and what they were about. And so got into watching Next Generation with this guy that I was boarding with, and thought it was really cool, and then kind of went looking for more, and so went back and rented, back in the Blockbuster days, got, some of the original, the original series stuff or whatever, and the little cardboard pop open cases there. With
man, I forgot about those. Oh, wow.
The little pop. It's like, and so and went back and watched some of those, and it just kind of grew from there. And I haven't enjoyed all the incarnations, and I know some people are not too, especially people who are into Star Trek, that when I say that Deep Space Nine wasn't my favorite, couldn't really get into that, but I did like Next Generation. My wife is a huge Voyager fan, and so we watched that here.
Nice.
And
so do you consider yourself do you consider yourself a TNG guy versus TOS? Because it's
More
usually,
so, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
more so.
it's usually, it's kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000. Like, are you are you a Joel fan or a Mike fan? Like, you know,
Joel all the way.
yeah. And Star Trek seems to be the same way of kind of like, usually it was the first one you were introduced to. That's your crew. I'm definitely a TNG kid. So it's fun to hear that you're a 53-year-old TNG kid. I dig that, man. I dig that. That's awesome.
Well, that's what, like, I'm still a huge Roger Moore Bond fan. As cheesy as those movies were, I'm a huge
Nice.
Bond fan. And Roger Moore, and my number two would probably be Pierce Brosnan. But I love watching the old Moore, just because it was the ones that I watched first with my dad, right?
Yeah.
And so it's in there.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, it's so funny. On the other show that I'm on, Cinema Shock, where we cover genre film history, a lot of the things that we've been watching, especially from the 80s and 90s, I was actually introduced to them on television. Has been formatted to fit your screen, this, that, yeah, and with commercial breaks and things like that. But speaking of James Bond, the one that I watched the most was Never Say Never Again, which is the one that is considered not a James Bond movie. And but it's got Kim Basinger from Batman. I'm a big Batman fan, so Kim Basinger is the girl. Sean Connery is my dude. But to be honest, like, I enjoy each generation of Bond is so, there is a Venn diagram crossover for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But
each one is so vastly different. And, you know, they reflect the times, and they kind of reflect us, honestly, the vibe of us as a people. And I think a lot of that also works for Star Trek. We've seen where, you know, in the 80s with TNG, things were a lot different. There was a counselor on board. Mental health was becoming was moving towards, you know, the forefront of people's consciousness. And now with new Trek, we've got things where there's a psychologist in charge of the ship's computer, played wonderfully by David Cronenberg. But yeah, it's such a fascinating time to be a Trek fan. And when I say a Trek fan, I'm talking about the franchise as a whole, like to see the breadth of the progression. Not only the breadth of the history within the franchise, but also as it is reflective of the time it was produced.
Right. And they've all tried to be groundbreaking in their own way. And I like that they introduced new things. I mean, Data was an artificial intelligence at a time when that was just kind of becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And I like too, I just saw, and I love this, that there was an episode of the original series where something happened to, I guess it would have been Sulu. And so Captain Kirk just calls for Uhura to take the helm. And she just jumps up out of her chair, goes over, sits down, and takes the helm.
Yeah.
There was no, oh, look, we've got a woman at the helm, there was none of that kind of stuff. She just did her damn job, and that was, and at the time, now nobody had bat an eyelash, but you got to know that back in the 60s, it was like, what?
Well, for even just in the standard setting for an African-American woman to quite literally have the captain's ear for the entire series, pretty much, and then to have
and his lips at one point.
And then to have a Russian sitting next to a Japanese pilot, right around the Cold War, not long after World War II. Like, Star Trek, the original series, broke huge ground. And I think from younger generations, and I'll say to a degree, I was part of that for a while until I started diving a little bit deeper, where it's hard to take it seriously. There was a big camp factor in the 60s for sure.
Yeah.
But, I always am quick to say, hey, look, cheesy sets, cheesy costumes, overacting, a lot of it. Yeah. But look at the story that they were telling. It was those scripts stand on their own, and they were really doing groundbreaking things in terms of their commentary on government, religion, social issues of the day, of that are still relevant
Right.
today.
Yeah.
So,
The monetary system.
exactly. Oh man. Yeah. It's any one of those aspects you could spend hours and hours unpacking, but let's look at the prequel, one of the prequels to TOS, Enterprise. What was your first experience with Enterprise? Do you recall?
I knew it was coming and I was awaiting.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, to me at the time, like, because when did that came out after Voyager?
Yes, it
It
came
was the
out
next one that was done
2002.
after Voyager.
Yeah, it got started in 2002, just a few weeks after 9/11. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. And so I knew it was coming, and I was intrigued by the premise. It was like, Star Trek without all the Star Tech. Yeah, like let's see where this is going, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I was waiting for it. And so in the first couple episodes, I was like, oh well, we'll give them a chance. Let's see where this is going. And it did show a lot of promise for a while, especially in the first couple seasons. But I have to admit that there came a point for me where it became kind of background fodder, where it was just I'd be I'd have it on while it was, and I'd make sure that I was in front of the TV when it was on. But I'd be, engaged in something else and kind of watching it peripherally. But I really wanted it to be good because I wanted to see all that Star Trek stuff. Pre teleporters and all that stuff.
Exactly. Red Alert doesn't exist. Like
right.
they have pockets.
Right. And that's part of actually what disappointed me in it later on, was because, like, for example, the first time they decide to use the teleporter to teleport, organic matter, a person, right? It just flies, and they're like, "Ooh, whoa!" So it was like, has nobody turned that dial on the board before? Like, like, come on, like, it shouldn't have been that easy. Had I written that, I would have written in a main character whose purpose was to die the first time the transporter got used. And I'm not talking about like, oh, he got lost in the buffer or anything like that. I'm talking like end of the movie Brundlefly stuff, man. Like,
yeah. Oh man. Well, some of the.
Well, then it became, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like this isn't, it would have been much more engaged. Maybe we don't have to do the Brundlefly thing, but it could have been so much more exciting than just like, oh, that totally flew. Okay, on with the story. Like, come on.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. I think there was definitely room to have something like that happen. I know one of the aspects of some of the more recent narratives that I've enjoyed in comics and television, just because most of those things are serialized or, chapter by chapter narratives, that, getting attached to a character and having that character's death mean something. It doesn't have to be a big something, but something that is memorable and propels at least the plot forward. Maybe not the story, but definitely the plot. I think that's one of the reasons. I think that's one of the reasons shows like The Walking Dead did so well. The stakes were incredibly high right off the bat. Yeah. You identified,
and they stayed like that for a long time.
Exactly. You identified with at least one character, or at least were in their corner rooting for them, but nobody was safe. Nobody. And you just didn't know who was gonna win, who was gonna lose, who was gonna survive. And I think that was really big. I recall a comic book series called Stormwatch Team Achilles. It came from DC Comics from their Wildstorm imprint.
Yep.
And it was sort of a UN based superhero police force, tasked with policing superheroes. And they had this great motley crew of very ragtag military folks that you just kind of were like, oh, this is like Dirty Dozen, this is Ocean's 11 but in superhero form, and this was so cool. And I don't think a year went by that I don't think we were out of that first year of that run on that story where a major character bit the dust. And it was one of my favorite ones, and I was floored by that. I was just,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it, but I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
it got that, it rang that bell for me. It got that emotion out of me. Have you,
Yeah, as long as they don't resurrect the character later on, because that's a pet peeve of mine. But yeah, dead is dead. But
yeah, well, I was
yeah,
going to ask you in terms of character deaths, how do you feel about putting the axe to one of your creations? Again, I haven't gotten too far into into Tritonus venture.
You know what? I like I said, I do outline my stories. I know where the story is going. However, because I'm hitting plot points, I don't always necessarily know how things are going to evolve from one plot point to the next. So there's still, as I'm writing it, like, so, sometimes I'll be writing a certain character and I'll be like, oh my God, as if they did that, like, yeah. And sometimes it's like, like that was amazing. Or sometimes it's like, oh my God, this character, turning out to be an even, bigger, colossal baddie than I anticipated. Like, but if it moves the story forward in a compelling way, then yeah, I have actually had people. I saw someone that I hadn't seen in quite some time, and this was a person who's beta read for me. And if people don't know what beta reading is, I write my manuscript, I polish it up, I send it out to some people that I trust with my work to get feedback on it, and then I take their opinions into account as I revise the story. And anyways, I saw this guy and I hadn't seen him for a while. And so I was out shopping one day and I see him, I'm like, hey, Mark, how's it going? And he points at me and he goes, you. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you killed this guy or whatever, rated like he was one of my favorite characters and you killed him. I'm like, dude had to die, man. I'm sorry. Like that's that was how the story played out. I didn't necessarily see it coming. I didn't plan for it to happen. But when it did look like things were going that way, it was like, oh, wow, this is something that's going to make this story so much better. If this, because like you say, if a character like that can die, especially if it's, like halfway through a book or something, then you have to wonder, like, who's gonna, if anybody is gonna make it out of this story.
Yep.
And it keeps the tension up.
Exactly. I think so. Let me ask you, in terms of the stakes being high and with the structure of Enterprise being essentially episodic for season 1 and 2, and then leaning heavily towards more serialized narrative with season 3 and 4, do you have a preference of one or the other?
You know what? If with Enterprise specifically, I think the episodic stuff was my preference.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you prefer the standalone chapters?
Yeah, because I don't know that in the whole Xindi plot line that there was enough stakes there. I mean, it was like, oh, the Earth is in jeopardy, but I never really felt it. Like it was like. I'm not even quite sure how to, but I never really got the sense that there was a chance that this would fail.
Yeah. I think honestly, the Xindi War arc is actually really great as maybe a mini series, maybe not necessarily a full season. We're talking, I
agree,
23, 24 episodes. That's a long time to it. I mean, don't get me wrong. You look at things like Battlestar Galactica, where it was this ongoing, it's amazing. But this ongoing thing, but that was very strictly serialized. Whereas Enterprise, here we are drawing to the end of season 3 of Enterprise, where season 3 is kind of, it's the Xindi War arc, but it's more of like, okay, here's a 3-episode chapter, here's a 2-episode chapter, and it's kind of back and forth with that. So the plot is moving forward and the overarching story is still progressing, but at the end of it, it's kind of just overdone. Yeah. It's overdrawn out.
I totally agree. You know what? This whole Xindi storyline would have been fantastic as like 6 to 10 episodes of like the meatiest part of it just kind of boiled down to its essence, rather than dragging stuff out that really wasn't that interesting, honestly.
Yeah. So here we are with this, and we've got finally we've seen these Xindi council members in shadow, and of course now we're actually getting to interact with them quite a bit, and we've got some interesting things happening here, especially with this goal of stopping the big goal is stopping the destruction of Earth. That is our primary goal. And here it's really starting to come to a head. But before we get into it, let's get to this week's recap. Brought to you in part by our Patreon supporters, Rev J and Jerry Antimano.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
They will gamble their lives to win back the world.
Help me save my people.
Some will not return. All new Star Trek Enterprise.
Needing a third species codes to arm the weapon, Xindi reptilians inject their prisoner, Hoshi, with neural parasites. With the Xindi superweapon about to be armed and time running out, Archer tries to persuade the Xindi aquatics to help him and his Xindi allies destroy it. Hoshi's kidnapping and Archer's promises to shut down the 70-plus known spheres, initially a partial desperate bluff, finally convinces the aquatics into believing that the sphere builders, and not the humans, may indeed represent their true enemy. A battle between Archer's Xindi fleet and the reptilian insectoid fleet soon breaks out around the superweapon.
There was a firefight!
Locating Hoshi on board a reptilian ship, a small squad of Makos led by Major Hayes and the support of Reed transports on board the ship to extract her. With the space battle ongoing, the transporter system is damaged so that no more than 2 personnel can beam out at a time. Holding off the reptilians on the ship, Hayes sends one of his men and Hoshi out first, and then the rest of the team. But just as Hayes, now alone, is beaming out, a reptilian soldier fires through his chest. Back on Enterprise, Hayes tells Reed who his successor should be, moments before he dies. With the threads of time turning against them, the sphere builders decide to intervene by creating spatial distortions around the weapon.
And so on.
The distortions hinder Enterprise and the rest of Archer's Xindi fleet and destroy a number of aquatic ships, which buys the reptilians enough time to activate the codes.
I need the codes.
Dolam has the superweapon enter a vortex and head for Earth, escorted by 2 allied ships. Inside one of the vessels, having witnessed the interference of the Guardians, the insectoid leader begins to doubt the motives of the reptilians. Since the reptilians already have the insectoid's launch code, Dolam destroys the insectoid ship. Far behind via the vortex, and needing to close the distance with speed, Archer takes a Xindi recommendation to pursue Dolam using Degra's faster ship, taking a sickened Hoshi with his team to guide them through the superweapon.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So this is really kind of a culmination of a lot of things, be it action and Archer's desperation, and we see Reed and the Makos, which those relationships have been very volatile since they came on board. What were your initial thoughts upon watching this particular chapter of the Xindi War unfold?
The Lieutenant Reed and the whole Mako thing was like, the guy, like, he tries way too hard to explain himself all the time. It's always like, hey, I hope I didn't offend anybody, and I didn't mean to, I think, I think that somewhere on the Enterprise, there's a loose panel on a wall somewhere that every once in a while, Lieutenant Reed pulls off the panel, pulls out his dead Mako rubber stamp, puts another one on the panel and puts it back in, whatever, and then totters off to do his thing. But he's always trying to explain how people's death wasn't his fault. It's like, let it go, dude. You're in a war,
Yeah,
people are gonna die.
It does seem out of character for someone who has such an extensive military background as Reed does.
Right. And he seems to toggle it back and forth between being this highly competent tactical officer and being this whiny, just how do I like he's annoying. He's the most wussy security chief in the history of Starfleet, I think. Like, I'm sure that like Scotty could kick his ass. Dr. Crusher could probably take a round out of him, There should be like Lieutenant Reed bum fights where like everybody just gets to take a pot shot, whatever. But,
oh wow.
Yeah. That character just doesn't, I don't know. But then he turns around, like and he'll, like at the end, Archer asks him, hey, like they've just taken a hit in the fight at the end, and Reed looks at him and he goes, "We've taken a hit to one of our nacelles," I think he says, "but we're still in this fight," and he just says it so confidently and so that it's kind of it's so disparate from him, like, "Oh, please don't hate me," like what. But I think Archer should have turned around and said, "Well, yeah, you know what? I saw you take a beating in the hallway the other day and didn't know when to just stay down. So I don't know if I'm gonna."
Exactly. Oh man. Do you think that? How did you feel about the addressing the dead Hayes and just kind of him sort of stepping up? Because at this point in Star Trek, there's no such thing as red shirts. It's basically
right.
Tactical combining with Mako's to form the security department of
Forces
Starfleet
or whatever. Yeah.
How do you feel like that was handled? Because I kind of it was good, but there were other times throughout the series where Reed's done something or Trip for sure had done something where it's like, that requires you handing a pip to your commanding officer. Like, you're going down in ranks, sir. At least one pip worth.
Yeah.
But how do you feel like this was handled?
Yeah, again, that's one thing that kind of got me about this whole thing too, was I didn't see it as being consistent, and so this is one of the points where we toggle back to Reed being, a tolerable human being, I guess, and whatever, and he's he's being compassionate and he's being professional, and yeah, but I think it gets overshadowed by a lot of the ridiculous crap that's gone on between them.
Yeah, I think so too. Shifting,
it's almost like it's partly an apology.
Yeah, for sure. Shifting focus a little bit here. We talked on this show before about season 3 really feeling like the writers have kind of had a chance to digest the events of 9/11 and are starting to put that into narrative. How do you feel about the betrayal and infighting amongst the Xindi Council? Because I found that to be, they were so united for the longest time, at least so we were led to believe. But here we see things are turning fast. What are your thoughts about the butting of heads through the Xindi Council in this episode?
Well, I think that's one of the actually better done parts of this, and the reason that I kind of feel that way. One of my favorite authors of all time is Robert A. Heinlein. Now, not everything he wrote was brilliant, but enough of it was that I love the guy. But one of the things that he said in one of his books is that anytime that you have more than 3 people allied, somebody is going to betray you. Like a 4th or a 5th person, like somebody, and that there's kind of there's a certain symmetry to that, right? Where if you've got 3 people, like you always know who was responsible for what. You always know who did whatever it was. If it wasn't me and it wasn't you, then it must be the 3rd person, right? And that kind of thing. But when you have, was it 5 different species or 6? 6.
5, but we find out that there was a 6th that
there was a 6th.
has gone extinct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was it should have happened, that the council should have fallen apart. There's no way that 5 so diverse cultures or whatever could just remain unified for that duration, especially with that much stress on them and that much at stake for them. Because you got to remember, as much as they're the antagonists in season 3, they're the heroes of their own story, and they believe in what they're doing, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I think it had to fall apart. Had it gone right through to the end with them just being unified right to the end, I would have been like, yeah, okay.
So in looking at the crumbling of the empire from within, I think about 2 different films, Dark Knight, where we see the three-man structure. You know, you've got Harvey Dent, you've got you've got Jim Gordon, you've got Batman, and to be honest, that really should have worked. But Batman points it out, and he targeted Harvey because he was the best. He was the best of them, and if he knew if he could take him out, the other 2 would fall. But also, the wife and I just finished watching, or I should say, rewatching last night, The Godfather, and looking at different betrayals within the 5 families that lead to many, many very gruesome deaths, and that power struggle from young Michael Corleone, who just seems to really have a bead on the nature of the people within his family and their interactions with the other families. There's no shortage of videos on YouTube of therapist reacts to, or body language expert reacts to. I'll have to see if I can find some of those types of reactions to Al Pacino's performance as Michael Corleone, because him watching certain he can see it coming a mile away. And I wonder if that was a thought because of his military experience, and again, I haven't rewatched part 2 or part 3, but just looking at part 1 as a whole, and of course the wife and I have also just finished watching The Offer. I don't know if you've seen or are aware.
I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen The Godfather in eons, and I haven't seen The Offer. No,
I highly recommend checking out The Offer, available now on Paramount Plus, because it is Albert S. Ruddy's story of the production of The Godfather, from him becoming a producer at Paramount, acquiring Mario Puzo's novel, and everything that they dealt with in the production. It is a fascinating story. I hope it wins all of the awards. But of course, after we finished that final episode, the 10th episode, the wife was like, well, we kind of have to watch The Godfather now. I was like, you got it, babe. And I pressed play, and
no
all right. I was like, you remember it's over 3 hours, right? And it was already like getting late. But yeah, those power struggles are so fascinating to look at. And it just dawned on me, another power struggle and betrayal from within, Jesus Christ and the 12 disciples,
right.
Judas betraying him, Peter denying him, and all of these things is so fascinating. But yeah, I was really fascinated by the reptilian sort of really took charge. He kind of reminded me of like Nicholson in A Few Good Men, of like, this has to be done. You need me on that wall. But yeah, any other thoughts about this episode before we move into our baseball card stats?
Well, the other dynamic that kind of got was the extra dimensionals, right? Even the reptilians kind of stepped up toward the end and brought things to the forefront, and probably questions that everybody had and nobody had ever said, and I thought that was good that they did that too, because they couldn't have been that blind, right? And so the reptilian brings it up, and of course he gets the Jareth the Goblin King speech from Labyrinth or whatever of, yes, I've tortured and manipulated you through all of this or whatever, but how dare you call me on it? You know what I'm talking
right.
about? Yeah.
Everything I've done for you.
And she says that, like, what are you talking about? Like, we have done all of this to save your people, when, it becomes glaringly apparent that it's been self-serving the whole time. Well, as a collective, that they've been doing this for their own ends.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we had with a recent guest, comedian Mike Kaplan was on the show, and we dived, well, it was deep for me. It might not have been as deep for him, maybe not as deep for actual practicing Buddhists, but we actually took a look at Buddhism. And I know one of the big things with Buddhism is actually questioning the beliefs and questioning,
oh, cool,
why are we worshiping? Why are we, subservient to this entity, whatever it is? And I think I think this might also be sort of a cautionary tale for folks who are taking a look at, again, 9/11 and some of the conspiracy theories surrounding 9/11 and saying, hey, look, we're not saying one way or another, but it deserves a second look. It deserves.
Can we question it? Can
we question some things? Can we start looking within? Since empires crumble from within, let's start looking within. I think I may end up taking a look at maybe setting up a religious discussion episode. We've had a couple of folks who are heavily involved in practice of religion, be it from a leadership standpoint or as scholars or theologians, but the
religion of Star Trek.
Well, religion in general and how it relates to Star Trek. I think of Kevin C. Neese, the author of The Gospel According to Star Trek, who has been on the show, and he and I had a really fascinating discussion about many things related to Star Trek and religion. And I think there's definitely some parallels to be drawn between, I'll just say, religion in general. I won't say any one particular religion, but that and this narrative that holds a mirror up to us as a society, but also as a
society.
Yeah. So let's take a look at some of the things that we when we look at an episode, be it good or bad, there's always the question, and we ask this question every week: who do we blame? This episode was written by Andre Bormanis and Chris Black. Andre Bormanis, his last work was season 3, episode 17, Hatchery, which we discussed, as I mentioned, with comedian Mike Kaplan back on episode 63. And Chris Black, his last work on the series was season 3, episode 20, The Forgotten, which was directed by LeVar Burton, aka Geordie LaForge, which we discussed with podcaster Drew Burrus on episode 66. And this episode was directed by Robert Duncan McNeil, aka Tom Paris. His last directing was season 3, episode 8, Twilight, which we discussed also with Drew Burrus on episode 53. Drew Burrus getting a lot of love this episode. The guest stars, we've seen a lot of these folks over the course of season 3. Scott McDonald as Commander Dolam, Rick Worthy as Jannar, the unkillable Tucker Smallwood as a Xindi primate counselor, Stephen Culp, of course, as Major Hayes, and Mary Morrow, we mentioned last week, as one of the sphere builder presages. But then we've got Mr. Bruce Thomas, who plays Xindi reptilian soldier. Now, that's not he doesn't get a whole lot of love in this episode, but he is a character actor, and I think he's worth taking a look at his resume. His first credit was a favorite of mine, Army of Darkness. He played Mini Ash number 2 from 1992.
That's awesome.
The sequel, Army of Darkness, of course, the sequel to Evil Dead 2, which of course is the sequel to Evil Dead, of course, all starring the wonderful Mr. Bruce Campbell, which how Bruce Campbell hasn't made it into a Star Trek episode is...
I would love to see him come on board.
Groovy.
If you had to cast Bruce as something in the Star Trek universe, do you go, is he an admiral? Is he a captain? Is he maybe an Orion? Or maybe,
God.
Because I can't see him as a Vulcan. I just can't. I don't think
that's
not Bruce.
No, that's not happening at all. You know what? He kind of remember in the original series there was that salesman that used to show up all the time, the guy that sold Kirk the tribbles to the, and wasn't he in the one where it was all of the
was it
Mud's
Mud?
women?
Yeah,
Mud.
Fenton
Yeah.
Mud. Oh,
Yeah, totally.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
if you were to bring that character back and plug Bruce Campbell into that, that's like perfect, man.
Well, I 100% fully agree. He would have made an excellent Fenton Mudd. Are you familiar with The Office, the US version of The Office?
No.
Okay. There's an actor on The Office, Rainn Wilson, who has been cast and played Fenton Mudd in New Trek. He made his first appearance in Star Trek Discovery, and he's doing well. And a lot of people are just like, oh, he's great. But I had never even thought Bruce Campbell. And now that I look at Rainn Wilson versus Bruce Campbell, I gotta say, like, I would really love to see Campbell.
Sorry if I wrecked it for you, man.
No, it's okay. That's one of the things I love, is just kind of, especially with creative folks who watch a thing and go, man, this is great, but you know, it would be even better.
Every time I was, because I did watch leading up to episode 23 to get to some of the background.
Right.
And every time I saw the name Stephen Culp come up, I meant to look and I did not. Is that the son of Robert Culp?
That's a good question.
Isn't it? And like I said, I thought of it every time I saw the name, and I mean they kind of have a similar, but Robert Culp, of course, was wasn't he in The Greatest American Hero? You remember that?
Maybe. Let's see. I've got Stephen Culp pulled up here. I don't see anything about. Oh, here's about his parents. No, he was the son of Mary Ann and Joseph Franklin Culp.
Oh, okay.
So no, just a coincidence. but a good pull though. That would have been really fascinating.
That drove me nuts every time, and I forgot every time though to check it out. So okay, there we go. No, he's not. We've
seen a couple of Hollywood legacies pop up in these episodes of Enterprise. Temporal Agent Daniels, you must have seen Temporal Agent Daniels, played by and now I forget his first name, but he is the son of legendary creature creator Stan Winston.
No way.
Yeah, that's his boy. Yeah. And he does a great job as Daniels. I love him as Daniels.
Yeah.
But back to Mr. Bruce Thomas here. He after Army of Darkness, he did some one-offs and a couple 4 or 5 episode runs on some soaps. But he is known primarily as the UPS guy from Legally Blonde and Legally Blonde 2. And also, as a big Batman fan, I can't let this go. He actually appeared in the Birds of Prey premiere in 2002 as Batman. So he might not get a lot of love in terms of actors who have played the live action Batman, but nerds, you gotta add Bruce Thomas to your list. He played him at least once. So, well, he actually played him in a couple of OnStar commercials in 2000.
Oh, was that him too? Guys, I remember in Birds of Prey, Batman was in there. Like it wasn't
very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly. But yeah. Oh, no way.
Yeah, but this is actually his second of third appearances on Enterprise. His last appearance was actually last week's episode, but we covered Mary Mara and her resume. Not long after this, he would do 43 episodes of Kyle XY as Steven Traeger from 2006 to 2009. But his other big claim to fame here is he is the mocap actor, mocap standing for motion capture, where they wear all the ping pong balls on their body. He is the mocap actor for Master Chief in Halo 4 from 2012, Halo 5 from 2015, and Halo Infinite from 2021. So not a bad little resume to have. So Daniel McMillan, let me ask you the question that we ask every week. Is this episode countdown? Is this essential viewing? If somebody's watching Star Trek for the first time, is this one that they can't miss in terms of the plot or in any other aspect?
I think if somebody's just starting out with Enterprise, season 3 is not the place to jump in at all.
Right.
But if you're watching season 3, I think there are episodes that you can kind of gloss over, but this isn't one of them. There's too much. There's too much setup. There's too much. This is where. Like I said, if this had been done in 6 or 10 episodes, like in a crunch, a lot of what is in this episode would have had to be in there. So, yeah, if you're doing the Xindi thing, got to do it. Otherwise, not so much.
Yeah, if you can kind of pick and choose from season 1 and 2 of like, okay, here's an Archer episode, here's a T'Pol episode, here's a Travis episode. Here, you can kind of get one for each of the cast and then kind of skip to that season 2 finale, which is where the whole Xindi war starts. But once you hit that season 2 finale, it's kind of all or nothing, really.
Yeah, you're in it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, any final thoughts? Thank you so much for coming on the show and being so willing to talk about this very volatile, very I think it's underrated period of Star Trek history. But do you have any final thoughts about this episode, the franchise as a whole, or your experience on this podcast?
In terms of Enterprise as a show, I like it. I mean, there's enough there that I think it's worth watching, and I do kind of. It doesn't hold the same place in my heart as Next Generation or even I loved First Contact, the movie. That's a rewatcher. That's something that I'll watch again and again and again. But I think Enterprise is worth watching if you're into Star Trek, more so than some of the other shows, maybe even. But it's definitely not top of the list. But I don't think it's near the bottom either. Franchise as a whole, I said I love that they can. I love that they, and I haven't seen the new ones. I should, but that's
it. You heard him, boys. Get him.
The franchise, I hope they're still pushing things. I hope they're still making us take that long look at ourselves as people. I hope that they're still, calling humanity on their crap. I hope that they're still, being introspective and thoughtful, and that they're still being hopeful, because there are times in Star Trek when I'm like, ooh, this is supposed to be about humanity becoming something better than they are. And I don't think this really reflects on that quite so much, but I think Enterprise does. But it's that starting point, the characters are fresh off the earth. They still hold some of they're still prejudiced in a lot of ways. There's still a lot of division, and these are things that in later incarnations have been largely overcome. And so I think it's interesting in the overall show to show where the beginning of the transition from us monkey people to the future spacefaring people that we can be. Because I mean, when it comes to humans going to space, basically we can be one of two things. We can be the aliens that we always hoped would show up here, or we can be the aliens that we always dreaded showing up here.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. I You mentioned that Enterprise doesn't hold as high a spot in your heart as some other versions of Trek, but let me ask you, in terms of things in your heart, do you happen to have do you consider yourself having faith of the heart? Do you have faith of the heart?
Oh God.
We can't get away from Enterprise without discussing the theme song, at least
Yeah.
a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay. You know what then? And I actually showed Tahira last night or the night before. It was like, okay, here's an episode 1, and here's the marginally tolerable theme.
Yeah.
Okay. And now here we are in season 3, and it's got that jangity jang guitar in it and whatever. And and I looked, and it is actually not Stevie Nicks playing the tambourine. I was kind of hoping it was, but it's not. And the only thing that they could have done to make that worse was exactly what they did.
Oh, yeah. I am always quick to say, it is definitely an earworm. Like if you let it will permeate your brain for at least 24 hours for sure. But I definitely like the season 1 and 2 version as opposed to season 3 and 4. I kind of wish that they would. I kind of wish that they had taken that song or Archer's theme, whichever, and let it reflect the mood of the episode. And I mean, as much as I love the visuals of the opening title sequence,
oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. I do kind of wish that in some instances they would have leaned heavier on the vibe of that story to reflect it, because there's times where like it's super hard and super heavy and super dark, and then here's this little jaunty tune. Like it doesn't fit, man. It just doesn't fit. Well,
and I think that's why an orchestral theme lends itself so well to these kinds of shows. I mean, couldn't have done it with BSG either. You know what? Okay, now correct me if you think I'm wrong, Todd, but the only time that I can think of a theme song with lyrics that worked for a sci-fi show was Firefly.
Bingo. I was like, he's about to say Firefly. That's such a banger, man. I'll play that in my car stereo anytime. If someone's like, well, what should we listen to? There's classic vinyl station on XM, or maybe some 90s or something. Oh hey, there's this one channel where it's just the Firefly theme on repeat. I'll be like,
over and over.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put that on for a while.
That's hilarious.
Well, next week, we will be joined by my good friend, photographer and visual artist, Mr. John Paul Newton, for Enterprise Season 3, Episode 24, 0 Hour, which, of course, is available exclusively on Paramount+. I'm looking forward to talking to JP again. His last time on the show was actually our fantasy draft episode from January of this year, so it'll be good to catch up with him. Daniel, where can people find your writings and support what you've got going on?
If you're looking for me on Facebook, you can find me at Daniel McMillan Author. And if you're looking for something to read, I've got one link that links to everything I've ever written and everything I ever will write in every format it's available in. And you can find that at books2read.com/RL/Daniel McMillan. So that's books2read.com/RL reading list/Daniel McMillan. And everything that I have written or ever will write will be available through that one link on every platform it's available on.
Awesome. And where can people bother you on the internet?
Oh, just don't. No.
Perfect.
No, actually, you can visit my website at vector11studio.com.
And I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all of the socials. From all of us at the Computer Resume podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you at 10 Forward.
us on Patreon and like, rate, review, and share on all your favorite platforms. Feel free to send us your subspace transmissions to computerresumepodcast@gmail.com or at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Computer Resume podcast was created and produced by Mr. Todd A. Davis. Our logo was designed by Will Martin and Justin Bishop. The opening theme was produced by Justin Bishop, and our outro music was provided with permission by DroNode. Additional music was provided by Mr. Todd A. Davis and Gary Horn, and the voice of Computer Resume podcast and executive producer, me, Kat Davis. Hashtag LLAP. We'll see you next time.
Going through a Star Trek. We're doing Star Trek stuff in space. We probably got some phasers and shuttle pods, and we're gonna find a brand new race.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?